Thank you. It's a pleasure to come up river and give the talk today. But what I'm talking on today is actually not related to that. It's something else, which I'm probably one I'm most proud of. It's the past 20 years I've run a student program in Los Alamos. We've had over 400 students. We've given student internships in applied math and computational sciences. And we go around the world trying to find absolutely the best scientists and students we can. You know, we find out who won the Putnam exam in the last year and track them down and say, would you like to spend a summer with us? We go to the International Math and Physics Science Olympiads, bring people from Moscow, from Beijing, from anywhere we can find. You know, these aren't students that walk on water. These are students that walk 6 inches above the water. I mean, they're absolutely, intellectually, they are fantastic. And then we also bring in students based on recommendations. Professors, colleagues will call us and say, this is the best student I've had in years. I think he or she will gain a lot out of being in Los Alamos. And I started noticing something a few years ago, that these students that were so fantastic, like the winner of the Putnam exam 15 or 16 years ago, came and worked with me in the summer. And this was the summer I realized that there are people that work at a higher intellectual plane than I could ever, no matter how hard I could get. I mean, he's up here and I was down here. But now 15 years later, he's got a kind of an oh-hum career. And other students that, you know, weren't walking on water, they were wading through. In fact, some students we thought would drown before the end of the summer have fantastic careers. And so what did they do different? What did these students that have fantastic careers do differently than those that ended up just kind of making their way through life? Because it wasn't just smarts. They had to make choices along the way. And so I decided to try to figure out how they made the choices. And I really focused on the students that had great careers, because there are thousands of ways to do things wrong, but often only a few ways to do things right. And it's best to focus on the successes and learn what they did than to learn 1,000 ways that you know not to do it right. And I came in with no preconceptions, but as I started talking to the students and writing down what they said, how'd you pick your job, why are you here, what's there, very quickly a pattern started emerging. And pretty soon I realized that all the students that I talked to, all the people with great careers, had 3 properties in common. And none of the people that had these oh-hum careers had all 3. They were always missing at least one of the 3. And so that's what the talk is on today. I'm going to go over these 3 attributes of a great career in detail and describe how you can incorporate them in your own decision making. So, talk about scientists with great careers, but I quickly realized this is not just about scientists. I mean, this is really about all people. So every person I know that has had a great career found some way to work on the right problem. They followed their passion. They found a problem that they would rather work on, even if they weren't paid for it. This is something they truly cared about in their heart of hearts. Okay? The second they all did, they found a right way to work on, a way that they could make a special and unique contribution. And I say talent here, we all have different talents, but they found a way to take their talent into a strength that applied to their passion. And I'll talk about how that's done and how that can be done. And the third attribute they all had is they all worked found the right place to be working. They found an engaging environment, an environment where they loved and cared about the people they work with, and the people they work with loved and cared about what they did. They searched out these 3 attributes. And so those are the 3 parts of the talk. And then I'll talk about how they all come together in a gestalt. So the first one is passion. I say every scientist I've ever known with a great career has been passionate. But I want to go beyond that. It's really every person. It's hard to imagine anyone having a great career, a great life, if they weren't passionate about what they're doing. Okay? And so the first question to ask yourself is, what are you deeply passionate about? This is not an easy question. Often we don't think about what makes us happy. We just kind of go through life. And so, pay attention to yourself. Do you want to make the world a better place? Understand math, physics? When you're doing it, you're often so happy. I say your smile's pushing your ears back. You'll be working on something. You notice you look at the clock and you say, "Where'd those 2 hours go?" People have a different tenor in their voice when they talk about what they're passionate about. And so not only keeping track of yourself, because no one can tell you what, this is who you are. It was set way back when you were kind of knee-high to a grasshopper. Your passions came through. Pay attention to yourself, but also talk to your friends, your colleagues, your loved ones. When do they see you most excited? One of the reasons I ended up at Tulane is I'm passionate about teaching. For 20 years I went to University of Arizona every month for 3 days to teach as a graduate advisor. It's about 800 miles, or not 500 miles, about 8 hours drive or a short flight. But my wife said, notice how happy you seem to be every time you come back from teaching. Maybe it's time to think about spending your whole life in an environment that you really care about. That was one of the reasons I ended up at Tulane. So think of it, if you could do anything at all in the next 10 years, what would it be? Because you need more than talent. You have to be passionate about it. And so it can be anything. It doesn't have to be mathematics. Do you want to make the world a better place? Don't underestimate the importance of mathematics in fighting hunger, poverty, promoting human rights. This afternoon I'll talk about how mathematics is having an international impact in fighting of emerging diseases such as HIV/AIDS, malaria, dengue fever. Don't estimate, just because you're in the mathematical or computational sciences, you can have a huge impact on these type of things. Also, we are fortunate in this room. We are part of the very small minority of people on this planet that have the capability of following our passion. Most people on Earth just worry about where the next meal is going to come from. Do they have enough food? Do they have shelter? Can they take care of their family? We are incredibly fortunate to be able to do this. So it's a gift that would be kind of foolish to squander. Are you passionate about the environment? Think about it. Right now, we're still at the very beginning of time for the human race. We've been around here, a few tens of thousands of years, hopefully. But we are responsible for our children, our children's children, and their children. And we're at a tipping point right now as far as the climate goes. We don't know how bad it's going to be or how much it's going to change. But what we do know is that the problem is so complex that it's not going to be solved by a bunch of politicians sitting around a table. They need input. They need scientists with great careers to help unravel the complexity, to try to figure out what are these unintended consequences if we reduce the amount of carbon going in the atmosphere or other type of changes. Maybe it's healthcare. Maybe you've had a loved one who was diagnosed with cancer and had a very long, excruciating treatment, and you would like to do anything you can to maybe improve life, improve health. This is something that changed, that I've been passionate about for many, many years. So a story that I read, what has been now almost 30 years ago, that changed my life. That there was this new emerging epidemic called HIV. At that time we didn't know, we just called it the gay epidemic. We knew it was a sexually transmitted disease, we knew it was 100% fatal, and we didn't know anything else about it. Now what we did know about sexually transmitted diseases like syphilis, and there was a herpes epidemic going on at that time, that they affected about 1/3 the population before they saturated. When the treatment came in for syphilis, about 28% of the people in this country were infected. Mostly asymptomatic. Only about 2 or 3 people with syphilis, 2 or 3% are symptomatic. The herpes 2 epidemic had already infected over 30% of the people in 20 years. Now, if HIV/AIDS was as infectious as those diseases, and it was 100% fatal, in 1980s, in 20 or 30 years, we could be looking at 1/3 or 1/4 the world population to be dead or dying. There was nothing more important at that time. I literally cleaned off my desk, changed my entire career to see what I could use my talents for. Luckily, HIV/AIDS is only about 1% as infectious as syphilis or herpes or others. So we dodged a bullet, at least in this country. But there are places like South Africa and Botswana and other places where about 1/4 the population is infected. And they are living this horrific nightmare that we had. Maybe it's preserving natural resources. It's a picture of a fire we had in Los Alamos 10 years ago, right about now. We had a fire rush over the mountains and burned through Los Alamos, burned out 400 homes in a day. In 3 days, it burned over 44,000 acres. And my son said, "How big is that?" And I said, "Imagine a one-lane highway around the earth at the equator. That's how much it burned in 3 days. Came roaring through town like a freight train." And we were evacuated, but our scientists went and we looked at we had the most modern firefighting equipment on the planet there. There they were with their pickaxes developed in 1887, and now at least they had airplanes, World War II planes that were dropping on it. But their modern stuff was they had pickup trucks with cell phones, so they could run around and see the fire coming over the hill until the cell phone towers burned. But when we came back to town, some of my friends said, "We can do much better than this. You know, we can model forest fires on the computer. We can model the forest fires create their own weather. When these trees explode, they create their own weather patterns." And so what they did, 3 of the scientists whose houses were burned down, they changed their careers and started developing, it's called fire tech, if you want to look at it on the web, predicting how the fire will go, where we can be most effective at dropping our retardants, what houses need to be protected that are at most at risk. How do we get firefighters out of harm's way early enough? So they had ideas instead of cell phones and pickup trucks, but laptops, coupled with satellite images that bring in the moisture, that bring in the vegetation, that can follow it in real time to optimize fighting a fire. They came back and they changed their life, and they were working, 15 hours a day easily when they came back, as I was with HIV/AIDS. But you know what? It's the hardest I've ever worked and the most satisfying work we've ever gotten. So I'm saying passion isn't dictated, it's discovered. Being aware of what's important to you. Maybe it's understanding the universe, where we came from, where we're going. It's an amazing fact that every atom in your body right now used to be in a star. When we started out, it's just, it's hydrogen. We had to have a star explode to create the matter that we're made of. That's an amazing fact. Okay? And to try to understand how the universe is evolving and our role in it. Some people can think of no bigger problem to work on. But you might say, "Hey, I'm a mathematician. I don't know anything about astronomy, whatever." But think about it. It's not taking your tools. You bring a different set of tools to study the problem. Think about in other areas like CAT scans and MRIs. They're based on the Redon transform. Okay, that was 100 years ago. It was standard mathematics. Without those mathematical transforms, we wouldn't have any MRIs. We wouldn't have any CAT scans. Archaeology. What's been one of the most paradigm-changing results in archaeology in the past century? Carbon dating. That didn't come from an archaeologist. It came from a physicist. What else? Airplane flight. The people that really made the biggest advance in airplane flight, there were a bunch of guys running a bicycle shop. Okay? The Wright brothers weren't experts in flight, but they became experts in flight. They gave themselves permission to follow their passion. And so you can think of, I can't think of them going to bed any time at night without the last thing they're thinking about is how can I improve the flight characteristics of this wing. When they wake up in the morning, they not only gave themselves permission to follow their passion, they committed to learning everything they could about something they cared about. And when I was putting this together, it actually changed my own life. So I make a point now, I don't go to sleep at night until I've done something I'm passionate about. And sometimes at 8 o'clock at night, I realize I've just done administration all day. So I stop, get out the computer, watching a movie, do some web surfing or whatever. Because when I go to sleep at night, the last thing I want to think about is something I really care about, something I'm passionate about. It's a wonderful way to go to sleep. Much better than worrying about traffic tickets or kids getting in trouble. I find plus it really sets it as you learn something new every day. Teaching. I mentioned I'm passionate about teaching. It's something I can't imagine living my life without doing. Maybe it's writing. It can be anything. It can be mathematics. I mean, just look at the beauty of mathematics. I mean, it's almost like the world is too small of a stage for the beauty that we can see in these fractal sets or in topological arguments. Um, it doesn't matter what it is. And I found that, so I was talking about passion for teaching, passion for this, for AIDS. When it really comes down to it, what my true passion is to understand. And I think that goes through almost all the sciences. If you're not passionate about trying, it doesn't matter what you want to understand, whether it's how a forest fire burns or how the fate of the universe. You just want to understand something and allow yourself passion to do it. And if you're not driven to understand, then perhaps science is the wrong play for you to be in. It's time to change and go on and do something else. Okay? So, people with a passion, the first thing they do, actually I've got the zero thing they do, is they try to identify their passion. Because they want to you want to give yourself permission to follow your heart. Too often we listen to others about what we want to do or what we should do or whatever. Only your passion is driven internally. It's not driven by others. It's what you personally care about. Okay? And so think about it. It'd be crazy not to follow your heart doing something every day engaged in it. You know, life is, we don't get do-overs. You know, it's not like an all-day ticket at Disney World where you walk in the door and you like this ride, you can go on again and again and again. You know, so it's a one-way trip. Okay? And so when I say give yourself permission, do everything. Take courses, read books, watch videos. Keep your eye open. If you see something on a Nova special, for instance, you like it, and you miss it, download it from the web. Go to PBS. It's $20 a pop to get the DVD. You know, that's nothing compared to the cost of your education here. Just seek out people that share. Surround yourself. Okay. And so when you think about, if you spend your life in something you're passionate about, and you ask people why they work so hard, to them it's kind of a dumb question. Why wouldn't you want to work so hard to become an expert in something you care about more than anything else? Okay? So that's the first one. I mean, it's an easy one. Identify your passion, follow your heart, and just do it. And so everyone I know that has this great career, they have their career within the passion, okay? They're based on finding, a great career is not just based on making a living. It's based on leading you to do something you're so thrilled about, you do it no matter what, if you have the chance. And if you're not in this circle, they find ways to work their way into the circle. Okay? And as I said, it doesn't matter what it is. And they also allow themselves the freedom to become the best they possibly can be in something they're passionate about. And you guys are all smart. You wouldn't be at LSU if you weren't. And if you do something every day towards what you're passionate about, there is absolutely no reason that you couldn't become the best in the world in it. And it won't happen tomorrow, it won't happen next week, it might not happen in 10 or 20 years. But every day, if you just add a little bit, download that, read that novel, read the fiction novel, not only nonfiction, but just every day you add a little bit to learning about what you're passionate about. It can happen. Okay. So that's the first thing. So everything. Now, if you spend your life doing something every day you're passionate about, you're almost certain to have a great life. Think about it. How could you not have a great life if every day you do something you really care about? Just kind of impossible. And if you don't do that, how is it possible to have a great life? If you've just gone through, muddling through, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily, a great life doesn't mean a great career. A great career means you really are having an impact. You're changing something. You're making it for the better. And that requires having some strength. You've got to have something special that the other people don't have. That gives you the edge. And what that is, it's talent. Now, we all are talented, but we're talented in different ways. Now, usually when you hear talent, you think of Tiger, Jay Leno, Bill Gates, etc. They have rare talents that really set them aside from everyone else. Well, guess what? No, they are no more talented than you are. But what they have done is they built their talents into a strength. Now, I'll use those two terms very specifically. So a talent is something that you do naturally. I mean, we went to dinner last week at a restaurant. There were like 12 of us, And the waitress came and took all of our orders, talked to us about the dishes. You know, oh, you'll love the shrimp remoulade, da da da. And I noticed later that she didn't write down a thing, but she'd had a meaningful discussion with them. She came back, everything was served perfectly. She has a talent for doing that I didn't do. I would be writing down minute notes here. Maybe you have a talent for someone comes in and gives you all these unorganized facts. I want to solve this, I want to do this, we do that. And you can write it out as an algorithm, a sequence of steps. In computational science, this is a very important talent to have. So someone comes and gives you a description of how they want to solve a problem, and you can extract an algorithm for that. Maybe your talent is going long and deep in a calculation. Maybe it's breadth. Maybe it's taking ideas from other areas and putting them together in different ways. My daughter's talent is empathy. She can talk with a young person, and within just seems like seconds, 20 or 30 seconds, she really gets a feeling for where this person's coming from and what their fears are, etc. She's an elementary school teacher. What a better talent can you imagine to build into a strength than a student that really can feel where these students are coming from. Okay? So she took her talent and made it into a strength. Now what a strength is, a talent, for instance, you might have a talent for knowing how complex parts work together, and you have a passion for automobiles and you want to become an automobile mechanic. Well, your talent is worthless unless you have knowledge. You've got to learn how a car works. You've got to know how the engine works, how the drivetrain works, you know, how momentum, energy is transferred. Then you have to gain the skills. You know, how do you take apart and put it together? How do you get your hands, you know, under the hood and really make a difference? And eventually gain expertise. And then it becomes a strength. And I mean, maybe you've taken your car and to be fixed to a true expert in auto mechanics, and you can hear as it comes in, as aha, I can hear you've got problem with your firing on number 3 cylinder or something here. Or in the sense of computational science, maybe your talent is taking someone's description of how to solve a problem and turning it into an algorithm. Okay? Well, if you want to be a computational scientist and write computer codes, that talent's going to be useless unless you have the knowledge. You've got to learn the syntax of the language. You have to learn how the computers work. You have to learn the operating system. That's just basic knowledge. Then you've got to practice. You've got to write code. You've got to talk to other people, find out how other people write exceptional code. Gain the skills you need. And eventually, after using it, you'll gain expertise. So I've been coding now, I don't know, 45 years, I guess. Yeah. Oh, that's frightening. But when students come into my office with their computer codes, they've got a bug and da-da-da, and the first thing they want to do is they want to show me the code. And I say, no. And think about the auto mechanic. You know, first thing he does, he talks to you about it. And they'll talk, well, it runs these 5 problems, and all of a sudden the 6th problem, the code just goes crazy and blows up. And so, well, how does it blow up? Well, it might be a memory overflow or something. So often you can tell them what the problem, it sounds like an off by 1 error. Or you didn't deallocate your memory in this recursive routine. But you slowly gain the expertise over time. And then this talent of taking this description of how to solve the problem and then actually getting the computer to do it becomes a real strength. Okay? Now, so talent without a strength will not lead to a great career. The same way, if you have a strength, you can have a good career. You know, if you don't have the talent of doing algorithms, and a lot of people don't have this ability to work in this high-dimensional space, you can be okay. You know, you can make a living, but you won't necessarily have a great career. So the key is find out what you're talented in and turn that into a strength, because only strength built on a talent can lead to a great career. Okay? So this is the first equation: talent plus strength with knowledge, and the only thing can't be changed is talent, because people don't change that much. When we were young, our talents were more or less set. They're wired in our brains. Okay? So that we can't change. We can add skills, we can add knowledge, we can add expertise. So don't try to be expert in everything. Find out what you've got a talent in and push that to the limit. And And a lot of this has been happening to you already. If you think about in elementary school in K through 12, we studied everything. That you could do well, you got the pats on the back. And in undergraduate, you started taking more of those classes. You became expert, and so it was more or less, it's a very strange way of finding out what you have a talent in, and to turn it into a strength. Okay. The other thing about this is that since we don't change that much, many of your mothers may have told you when you were a small tot that, little Johnny, little Betty, if you work really hard, you can become anything that you want to be. I've got heartbreaking news. It's not true. You can only become anything you want to be if it's based on a talent. For me, if I started learning music as a young child and studied and worked every day and played the piano, guess what? I'd never become a Mozart. I don't have the talent that he had. So instead of trying to become mediocre in everything, find out what you do well and become really good at that. Okay, so this was where the talk used to end here, and I realized there was something really missing. Because people would tell me about other things they did, and it wasn't covered. And Albuquerque has a balloon fiesta every year. It's fantastic if you ever get it. It's every fall. The balloons take off in the morning, and sometimes there are ascensions of 400 and 500 balloons at dawn. Waves, and you can walk out among the balloons. And they'll call you to help, give a hand holding the rope, tying them down as people get in. You can pay some money and go up in some of the balloons. All the vendors, and there's music. It's like the equivalent, the closest Albuquerque gets to a Mardi Gras-like festival. Okay, and I realized that somehow our talents, see, we're all unique. Our balloon we can't change the balloon. Once we own a balloon, that's our balloon. Okay, you might think of our career as how high these balloons go, and how high also depends upon the strength. How much propane we put into them, how our skills and our knowledge of how to use the wind patterns. Albuquerque has a box wind pattern, so depending on where you want to go, you change your elevation, and you can actually fix where you land because of the complex wind patterns there. But you've got to know about these things. So you can learn all these. You can get all the strength in flying the balloons. You can get all the equipment. But there's something about these balloons, that the greatness of their career is based on the height of the balloons. There's something seriously wrong with this picture. Okay? The balloons are all on the ground. None of these careers have taken off. Because they have anchors, they have sandbags, they have these ropes. And just as we all have talents, are as talented as, say, Jay Leno or Bill Gates, or any Nobel Prize winners, we are just have as many non-talents as they do as well. Now, what's a non-talent? Non-talents are anchors that can hold down your career. They can be anchors. Non-talents are not necessarily weaknesses unless they become an anchor. Okay? So what do I mean by this? Well, example of a non-talent is eyesight, for example. Okay, I can't read I can't read a scientific article right now. Okay, my eyes aren't good enough. Okay, I can mitigate it. I can pull out. Imagine how good of a scientist I could be if I couldn't read. It'd be much harder for me to make it. I can bring out my reading glasses, and everything becomes perfectly clear. Now, my eyesight it's a non-talent, it'd be a tremendous anchor to my career unless I did something to mitigate it. Now it's not an anchor at all. It's not a weakness if I mitigate it. Maybe your non-talent is spelling. Use a spell checker. Make a commitment that you won't send out that resume, that letter, or that email until after you've run it through a spell checker. You can mitigate it. And now that what would be an anchor to your career, if you send a job application full of misspelled letters, that, believe me, that's words, that's an anchor. It's no longer one. Your non-talent is not an anchor. Okay, another way to do it is partner. You can find someone to work with you. So one of my talents is I take things from many different places and put them together in new ways. I can see a physical system and write down what the equations are. in a very reliable way. One of my non-talents is taking that mathematical system and going long and deep, proving existence, uniqueness, maximum principles, looking for stability analysis, all these type of things. I can do it, but I find it painful and I'm not very good at it. I collaborate a lot with Ja Lee. He's the chairman of math at University of Alabama, Huntsville. Ja has a talent and a strength in doing exactly that. Walk in with a set of equations, he just is in heaven, working out what the stability, what the analysis is, what the uniqueness, etc. So together, we work together. He and I partner. He's not very good. He doesn't have a talent for driving the equations, but he has a talent for understanding them at a mathematical level. So we've written 20 or 30 papers together, and every one of those is far, far better than if I'd written them alone or he'd written them alone. So we find a partner. And the third way is just sometimes you just have to buckle down and learn what you need to learn. There is no partner. There is no simple way. You just have to bite the bullet and do it. Okay. So understanding what you don't have is just as important as understanding your talents. They're equally important, and this is something that's often missed. So talk about these guys again. They are just as non-talented as the rest of us. Bill Gates, for example. This is Bill Gates, when he was still in Albuquerque. We like to think we could have kept him there. So Bill Gates is absolutely fantastic in understanding where computers are going and software and where the whole field is going. He was okay at business and finance, but not really that good. And so what did he do? He found Paul Allen as his partner. Paul Allen was as talented in finances and the way to run a company as Bill was in computers. I mean, everyone knows Bill Gates. Paul Allen, I think he's one of the top 50 richest people in the world. He owns a few teams like the Portland Trail Blazers, the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe you've heard one of his companies, DreamWorks. He was voted as one of the top 100 influential men of the year by Time magazine. The two of them together had a synergy. 1 + 1 = 1,000,000 or billion for these guys. That far exceeded we'd never heard of either of them if they hadn't got together, probably. This partnership is what made Microsoft what it is. Well, for Tiger's current problems, he had another problem. So this is a press release from 2004. He was being held by one of his non-talents was an anchor to his career. It says, Tiger's got 8 majors have come and gone since he won the last one. He's not even a bookie's favorite. Now, what was his non-talent? His non-talent was he'd get in a sand trap and bogey the hole. Everything would be fine until he hit the sand. Okay. So what could he do? He could mitigate it. No, you can't really get an automatic partner, get a caddy who would take those shots for him. His only choice was to buckle down and learn what he had to do. So he'd never be great when he hits the sand traps, but at least it wouldn't knock him out of his, it wouldn't hold down his career. Okay, so he left the circuit and literally spent weeks and weeks and weeks just living in the sand traps until that would no longer hold down his career. And he came back the next year and won 13 major championships in the next year and a half. So sometimes you just have to acquire the skills that you need. Okay. The same way with many of you may want to be teachers. It's another example where if you want to, you might be a fantastic research scientist, but you can't be a fantastic in an educational institution unless you can teach. You can't really mitigate. I mean, every day, if students would get pretty upset if every day you showed a video or gave a test or something. Partner, your friends in college would get upset before every class. You went knocking on the door. Can you take my class? Can you take my class? The only way to do it is you just got to buckle down and learn those skills yourself. Okay? And when you do, every time you take one of these non-talents and keep it from being an anchor, it's like cutting one of those tethers that were holding down the balloons. And they are throwing off a sandbag. And we get up there, we're all different, which is it's just marvelous. We all have different talents. We all are going to base our careers on a different set of fundamental abilities. It means it's not so crowded up there. I think anyway, so the goal here is, for the second one, is create a strength that's based on your talent, which you've improved through knowledge, skills, and expertise, and you've found some way to keep your non-talents from becoming anchors. So I mentioned there was only one equation. This is the only equation. In fact, if you only take anything away from this set of the talk, to think about it in terms of this, okay? The key is you don't try to put in what was left out. You take what was put in, your talent, and strengthen that. That is the key, the second key in everyone who had a great career, okay? And their talents were all different. But their approach to making that talent a strength was all the same. So before, when I was, you mentioned at Los Alamos, I was the head of the applied math group there for 20 years. And something we started doing every year, we'd have a one-on-one with I was the chairman, would meet with every professor or scientist and would talk about their careers. And everyone had to make a commitment in the next year to do two things. They had to find something that they were talented about and either add knowledge, skills, or expertise on the plus side. So if they were programmers, they may learn a new debugging tool. If they were mathematical scientists, they may learn something new about compressed imaging or something, a new field which might come in. Okay. Then they had to identify a non-talent, and most of them were kind of uncomfortable with this, but find out what they would do to keep that non-talent from becoming an anchor. And often the non-talents had nothing to do with science. About half of my group were foreign nationals, and one of their biggest non-talents was the presentation skills. Maybe it was the language, speaking English. Maybe it was writing and publishing a technical paper. Maybe it was writing a proposal that got funded. It could be anything. But they are speaking. They had to commit the next year to keeping, because that can hold them back. Unless your communication skills are at a level people can understand what you're doing. You might be doing the greatest science in the world, but you can't have a great career because no one understands it. It's got nothing to do with science, but it has to do with your career. And so, especially the younger students, I would all pick something like the next year I will do Toastmasters, or I will seriously get down and learn how to write and publish a technical paper. You know, what are the aspects that make this paper publishable? Even though maybe you've read two papers have the same scientific content, one just resonates, this is fantastic, and the other one's, I don't know what the heck he's doing here. So they would commit to doing this. Kind of mid-career scientists often be time management. I've got to get my email under control. Or my travel schedule is just overwhelming me. Or I've got far too many commitments that I can never make. And so people that were in the mid-career would commit to, say, time management. People that were further along, say, managing teams, or they would learn managerial skills. The idea is that you can learn to manage a team just by osmosis is about as good of an idea as I can learn calculus and mathematics by osmosis. I just keep doing it, making enough mistakes, and eventually I'll get it right. So they decided to go and actually take a course on how to be an effective manager and leader. And so we did this, we used it in August. We'd have a touch-up, maybe 10 or 15-minute talk together in January. And the next August, we'd review what they did the last year and make a commitment for the next year. And we always did this about a week or two before raises were passed down. Very effective. But you think about it, every year they would do something to increase their strength and knock away a potential anchor. The first year it's not going to make much difference, but if you do this every single year, after 5 or 10 years, all of a sudden, you've created a fantastic base to build your career on. Now, strength is not enough. Now, when I first gave this talk about great careers, and I mentioned it was at an REU, Mathematical Theoretical Biology. Carlos Castillo Chavez is REU for math bio. One of the students came up to me and said, I see you're going to talk about great careers. You know, the greatest career in history has been Michael Jordan. And unless you can talk about Michael Jordan, I don't know if I even want to listen to you. So the challenge was thrown down. So Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player in all of history. I mean, look at this concentration. He's flying across the floor. The ball's, you know, it's gonna land. It's gonna go in. There was no greater basketball player. But what not known about Michael Jordan is that when he was an undergraduate at UNC, he went as a math student. Okay, and visiting close friends at UNC, and I was talking to him, and the word is that math class, his mind was all over the place. He wasn't a very good math student. He could do it. He had the talent, the mathematical talent, but he just didn't seem to focus. You can imagine in math class, he was thinking about basketball. As a freshman, he barely made the freshman team in basketball, but he was totally engaged. Okay. After 2 years, he left math to go on something more. But and the reason is that and I think I guess degree in psychology or sociology or something, but it just never would work. Can you imagine if he's up there thinking about his mathematics? How good this would be. I mean, you know, he was talented in both. But it would never be a strength. His basketball would never be a strength unless he was passionate about it. You know, just think of now. There's no way that ball's going to go in. Yeah, you know, it's more like, oh no. It only works if you're in this area of overlap. If somehow you've identified your passions and you found strengths that will contribute to that passion. If you find yourself here doing something you can do really well but you don't care about, make your decisions to get in here. If you find yourself over here, oh, I really love this, okay, you can have a great life, but you aren't going to have a big impact unless you can find a way to apply your strengths. So this is the sweet spot. Okay, the third aspect is engaging environments. It's equally important as the other two. And the key here is that people aren't the key to great careers. It's the right people. Finding the right people to work with. The right people, what I mean by the right people will see that the biggest indicator of future success is past success. And it doesn't even matter what it's in. The right people succeed in whatever they do. Now the wrong people may, like a used car salesman, they may spin a beautiful tale, etc. But if they don't have they have a track record of failures behind them, avoid them like the plague, because they haven't learned how to succeed. So, and this goes not only in your career, but also by now you've all learned in classes. It's not what you take; it's who you take it from. I go back and think about what I learned when I was a student. And it's what I learned from the professors of how they do the mathematics rather than the mathematics they learned in class. Well over 95% of the mathematics I use now, I learned after I graduated. But what I learned from professors like Louis Nuremberg or Peter Lax or Heinz Otto Kreis, that has stuck with me. It's given me a basis for my career. So it's first who and then what. Now, of course, when I say this, you've got to make sure you get all the boxes checked to get your degree, but often you have a lot of flexibility. Because the other thing is picking not necessarily on who has the highest credentials. You know, people, I want to go here because they have 3 members of the National Academy or they've got a Nobel laureate over there. Well, that may be totally irrelevant for you and your career. Because unless these people really support you in what you do, it can be detrimental as opposed to helpful. It's character is what you look for in. And so one thing I like to tell people is when they go look for a job and look for an environment, look for a culture of discipline. Now, a culture of discipline doesn't mean someone's knocking over, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, work. Culture of discipline is that people work hard because they love the work they do. And there's a culture of working hard. You know, look around at 5 o'clock. Are all the doors closed and people gone home? Or are people there working, continuing to work because they really love it? Seek out clock builders, not time tellers. A clock builder, Think about your professors. You're going to ask how to solve this problem. Now, a time teller is, well, you integrate by parts, you do an asymptotic expansion, you do a substitution of variables. There's your answer. How could you be so stupid? Next time you solve a problem, he gets to tell you again. This time we take the Fourier transform. Here you are. How could you be so stupid? A clock builder comes in. Well, we're going to solve this problem. This is not the first problem you're going to have to solve like this. Let's talk about what you need to do to solve the problem. What do you think the first step is? And they teach you how to build a clock. So in the future, when you need to know the time, you don't have to go run to someone else. They've taught you the skills of what you need, okay? But even clock builders have to work in the right environment. Just think about this. You might be the most fantastic clock builder in the world. You might build sundials that just are unlike anything else. But if you're building them in the shade of the people that work around you, no one's going to know or even care about your work. So you look for places where they will shine a light on the accomplishments of others. They really will. They don't just talk about what they're doing. Professors will talk about what their students are doing. And the students work together as well. Talk about this, creating a bus. Actually, I'll continue on. So what a bus is, I use the bus because I didn't bring that out. Okay, so students, when you think about great waves of students that have come through, they don't come in a uniform dribble. Example is that, so I came through a wave of, in other words, you might have 2 or 3 years, we have a whole group of students that are just changed the world, and the next 5 years see nothing. So I came through a wave at Quran Institute. And with my wave was Andy Maida and Tom Beal and Stan Osher and Dave Levermore. Greg Creeksman, it goes on. Anyway, there was about 4 or 5 years at Quran where all of us just helped each other. We created our own bus. We helped each other in every way. We shone a light on each other's work. We talked about what other people did as much as we talked about what we did. And we've done that continuously now for the last 30-odd years. Now, the people that came 5 years before us or 5 years after us were just as smart, maybe even smarter, but they didn't click in the same way. Stanford had a similar bus. In the 70s, there was a group of students at Stanford, Nick Trefeffin, Marcia Berger, Bill Gross, Randy Levesque, I forget it, and we can go on and on. Or Eric Gross, I mean. There was a group of students there that changed the world of numerical analysis. Of the 10 students, at least 7 of them have great careers. Now, I can't tell you who went to Stanford 5 years before them or 5 years after, but that group, they created a bus. They got the right people on the bus. They got the wrong people off the bus. They didn't kick them out. They found other places. And their bus was unique to their environment. And we all have different buses, just as our talents are different. This is our 2-lane bus here. But anyway, so surround yourself with these people. So be supportive of them, people that you care about, people that you love, people that will and feel the same about you. So, how do you find these places? Well, talk with professors and their students. When you go interview for a job, don't, believe me, the department chairman, the dean, are going to tell you what a great place it is. Talk to the students, talk to the postdocs, talk to the people that are at the level you're entering and ask them what the environment's like. They're far more likely to give you an accurate description than the upper ones. Go to SciAm, AM, SMA web pages. Go to the meetings. When you find papers you find interesting, track down the authors. I don't know of any author that's ever been insulted by a student sending them a paper saying, "I really enjoyed your article. I'd like to meet you. Just see you're giving a talk at the next SciAm meeting. Could we have coffee or something?" Visit the departments whenever you can. Okay. So that's the third circle. Now you kind of get the idea. And so where great careers are really made is every single one had a great career somehow found a way to be in the middle of this circle. And I should say we make it kind of sound simple. It doesn't happen overnight because, actually, let's think about this. if you weren't in the middle of this circle, is there any way you could possibly have a great career? So, for instance, over here, you're passionate about what you're doing. Okay. You're passionate about what you're doing. You have great strength, but people around you couldn't care less. You don't like going to work in the morning. There's no way. No, the only place for a great career, you might have a fantastic working environment, but you don't care about it. You might even be good at it, but you don't care about it. So when you're making your choices, the choices should be those choices that bring you closer to the center area. Okay, and that center, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's and I like to use a flywheel as kind of an analogy. Now, what a flywheel is this big object. It can be made out of metal, stone, or whatever. But when you first come up to a flywheel and standing still, it seems almost immovable. Okay? And the speed of this flywheel is kind of like the momentum of the flywheel is like the momentum of your own career. Okay? And so you first go up there and you're pushing on it. Nothing much happens. It's big. It's heavy. Okay? Now, passion kind of gives you the desire and energy. There can be up days and there can be down days, but you really care about getting your career going. And so this gives you the desire. The strength, how much you're able to push on that flywheel in your career, depends on how much you've been able to take your talent and turn it into a strength. So it's a one-to-one analogy. And the same way with the weaknesses and your not becoming anchors. And the environment, that's your support group. They're your cheerleaders. They're the ones that are there to encourage you. They're the ones that when you get tired, you have your down days, they come and take it over. And it's all three of these together. And you kind of bit by bit, this flywheel starts taking on its own momentum. And like I said, it doesn't happen, it takes a long time. And this is a sign I saw in my dance studio the other night. I need to clean it up. I just took the picture last night. But perseverance, it's just this little by little. And slowly, this flywheel gets its own momentum. Now, if you've ever tried to stop a flywheel that's in motion, you know how hard that is. So think of the great scientists you can think of, or great people even with a flywheel. They can step back. They can do other things. It looks so easy for them. It looks like here they've got this great career that's got this momentum. You look at what they do. What makes that so great? Well, it's because it's built up over time. Once that flywheel takes on the momentum, it has a life of its own. So anyway, so that's the goal. Now, reality, you can't always get what you want, but this gives you a way to make choices to get closer and closer to that segment. And so it says how you can set your goals based on, literally think about it in terms of when I'm making this choice between these jobs, how close is it to something I'm passionate about? Does it build to my strengths, my talents? Is it an engaging environment? Career is not based on a salary, but yet you still need to make a living. After all, we all do want to have a secure, well-paid job, accomplish our job, see our families, have some free time. And so these things all have to be built into our decision. And one way to keep those built in is to think about broaden your choices. So academia, we all know and love. It's natural. I'm very comfortable here. Laboratories and industry are also can be equally interesting, exciting to work. Say, well, I want to do research. Well, I give an example down here. Think about Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. That was not an academic job. That was work for hire. The Pope came in and says, I want you to paint the ceiling. And he ran away to the quarries and Carrera, and they had to bring him back. And okay, I'll paint it. It was he didn't write a a proposal to the Arts Council of Rome for painting it. It was a job. And they have these types of jobs at the national laboratories and industry. Now, industry is far more driven by the products that go out the door, and the national laboratories are kind of halfway in between. 1 foot in industry and 1 foot in academia. They all have summer internships. It's a great way to find out more about them. The other thing is keeping flexibility. When you make decisions and you're not sure what to do, it's always best to take the most flexible. Okay? Keep rooted in your passion and the three pillars: the passion, the strength, and the environment. The other thing to think about is you guys are at a very critical point in your career, especially the younger people. You're here, okay? And now is when you'll make decisions that set future paths. And it's very hard to change tracks later on. They're almost like, you call them tracks, they're almost like train tracks. If you get started on the wrong path, that doesn't give you the flexibility, doesn't give you the ability to make choices in the future that brings you closer to where you can have a great career. It's almost impossible to change later. So a mistake early in your career can lead to a lifetime of unfulfilled dreams. So think carefully now as you go through here. So finishing the talk saying, why would you want to do all this? Okay. Well, when I ask you, why would you not want to spend a life doing something that you're passionate about? I'm just saying, make conscious choices to do that. If you have passion, why wouldn't you want to take your talents to make them strengths and applying it to that passion? Why wouldn't you want to become the best expert in the world in something you truly care about? And finally, what other place would you rather work with than being surrounded by others who share your values and goals and things? So when all the piece comes together, it's not only a great career, I think these are the keys to also having a great life. And it's important to have, it's almost impossible to have a great life and have you without having a meaningful life. And these put everything together. So when you ask people who have these great careers, why they work so hard, etc. And the question isn't why, it's why wouldn't you not do this? It takes more planning. That is a key. It's not just following your nose. You actually have to think about these. No one can tell you your passions but yourself. Your talents are inherent to you. What's an engaging environment for you may not be right for others. It does take more work on your part. But when you look at the people that are doing it, they have more opportunities, more satisfaction, they have more fun, they make more money. They don't work any harder. In fact, I think the people with the great careers, it seems to me, they work less hard. Or maybe it's just because they work hard and it doesn't matter because they love it so much. So the question is not why strive for this, but how. And I hope I've given you some thoughts on this. And it's also from a kind of a selfish viewpoint. So for my stage of the career, I see we have never needed mathematical scientists more than we need them today. I mean, the questions around the world as far as with water, climate, economy, energy, health, peace, you can't name any big problem that is not so complex that we need to have people, especially in the computational sciences, be able to unravel this complexity because politicians will make decisions no matter what. And unless we can elucidate, make it clear what some of the unintended consequences are, we really run a big risk of not preserving this world for our children and our children's children. So don't underestimate the importance of what you're doing on these truly fundamental questions. And this is what I want to leave you with. And I'm truly envious of the young people in the world. I don't think there's been a better time in history to be a mathematical scientist or scientist in general than there is now. I mean, the world is just waiting for for what you guys can do and what impact you'll have. And so I'm truly envious. If this was an all-day ticket, I'd go back on this ride again, because it's been a marvelous life and a marvelous career. So I want to thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to provide copies of the slides to anyone sends me an email. So, pizza.